Once upon a time, in a forest so deep that sunlight barely touched the ground, there lived a couple named Sarah and David. They had been married for 5 years and wanted nothing more than a child to love. But every time Sarah became pregnant, something went wrong. 3 times their dreams were broken. 3 times they buried their hopes. One day, a mysterious letter arrived with no return address. It spoke of an orphanage hidden in the forest where unwanted children waited for loving homes. Sarah and David looked at each other and knew this was their last chance. The orphanage stood like a forgotten castle, covered in ivy so thick it seemed the forest was trying to swallow it whole. Miss Thorne, the woman who ran the place, was as pale as moonlight and spoke in whispers. "I have the perfect child for you," she said, leading them through empty halls. "A beautiful baby who never cries, never causes trouble. But there is one rule you must never break." She stopped and looked them straight in the eyes. "Never take the child outside after the sun goes down. Promise me this." Sarah and David promised, though they didn't understand why. In a small nursery sat the most beautiful baby they had ever seen. It had skin like porcelain and eyes that seemed far too wise for someone so young. The baby didn't cry or fuss. It simply watched them with those ancient eyes. "What's its name?" Sarah asked. "That's for you to decide," Miss Thorne said, handing Sarah an old book. Other families who cared for this child wrote down their experiences. You might find it helpful. They took the baby home that very day, promising to love and protect it forever. Sarah rocked the silent infant while David prepared the nursery. Everything seemed perfect. But when morning came, Sarah gasped in shock. The baby had somehow become smaller overnight, like it had aged backward. She called for David, her voice shaking with fear. "This isn't possible," David said, staring at the tiny infant that had been bigger just hours before. Sarah opened the old book with trembling hands. The first page, written in someone else's handwriting, made her heart stop. Day 1, normal baby. Day 2, smaller. Every night it becomes a newborn again, but it remembers everything. As if hearing their thoughts, the baby opened its eyes and spoke in a voice clear as crystal, "Sarah." "David." They had never told the baby their names. Each day brought new strangeness. Though the baby looked only days old, it could sit up and draw pictures, not childish scribbles, but complex symbols that made their eyes hurt to look at. When Sarah asked what the symbols meant, the baby spoke again. "Mama 3. Papa 7, it said in a voice far too old for its tiny body. Sarah flipped through more pages of the book. Different handwriting filled every page, dozens of couples who had cared for this same baby. The horrible truth became clear: they were not the first Sarah and David. She was the third Sarah to love this child. He was the 7th David. "What happened to the others?" Sarah whispered. The baby looked at her with eyes full of sadness. "They ran away when they understood what I am. But running only starts the story over with new parents." As the days passed, Sarah and David began to change. Gray appeared in their hair overnight. Lines formed around their eyes. Strange scars appeared on their hands, scars they couldn't remember getting. They were growing old too fast, losing pieces of themselves. "What are you really?" David asked on the 5th day. The baby, now tiny as a newborn again, began to cry for the first time. "I'm just lonely," it sobbed. "I've been alone for so very long. Hundreds of years, waiting for someone to love me enough to stay." Sarah's heart broke. She picked up the crying child and held it close. "We're not running away," she said firmly. "We promise to love you, and we keep our promises." The baby looked up in wonder. No one ever stayed before. They always got scared and ran. That night, instead of packing their bags like all the others, Sarah and David did something different. They took the symbols the baby had been drawing and painted them all over their house, on the walls, around the windows, over the doors. As they worked, something magical happened. The baby began to grow, becoming the right size again. the symbols, David realized. They weren't warnings. They were protection spells. You were trying to teach every family how to break the curse, but they all ran away before finishing. When dawn broke on the 7th day, the curse was finally broken. The baby would grow up normally now, loved by parents who chose courage over fear. Sarah and David looked older, the magic had taken some of their years, but they were happy. The baby, now free from its endless cycle, looked up at them with tears of joy. "Thank you for not running away," it whispered. "Thank you for loving me." And so, like all the best fairy tales, this story ends with love conquering fear, a family created through courage, and a child who finally found the home it had been searching for across centuries of loneliness. But late at night, when the wind blows through the trees, some say you can still hear Miss Thorne's whisper echoing through the forest, there are always more children waiting for the right family to find them.